There is a loaf of bread cooling on my kitchen table right now. It is the color of a chestnut horse, soft enough to press your thumb clean into the side, and it cost me less than 50 cents to make. No bread improver, no dough conditioner, no word on the label you cannot pronounce because there is no label at all. Just flour, water, a little sugar, a spoon of fat and salt. 5 things. And yet the bread you buy at the store, wrapped in plastic, with a shelf life longer than some marriages, cannot do what this loaf does. It cannot stay soft and honest at the same time. After my last video, a great many of you wrote to me and said the same thing. Amish, you said, I can grow my own food, I can heat my own house, but I have never once made my own bread that did not come out like a brick. So I went back to my grandmother's recipe box, the wooden one with the brass hinge, and I pulled out the card she wrote in pencil more than 60 years ago. And before this video is over, I am going to show you the exact recipe, the one trick that almost everyone misses, and the real reason store bread can sit on a shelf for 3 weeks while yours goes stale in 3 days. It is not magic. It is chemistry. And once you understand it, you will never be fooled by a soft loaf again. Stay with me. Let me start with the thing that matters most. Why is good bread soft? Not soft like a sponge, but soft like a pillow that still has some chew to it. The answer is a living thing, yeast. A single packet of yeast holds billions of tiny living organisms, and they have one job. They eat sugar and they breathe out gas. Carbon dioxide, the same gas you breathe out right now. When you mix yeast into warm dough, those organisms wake up, they feed, and they fill the dough with thousands of tiny bubbles of gas. That gas is what makes bread rise. That gas is what makes it light. But gas alone is not enough. You can blow a bubble in water and it pops in a second. The dough has to be able to hold that gas, to trap it like 1,000 little balloons all at once. And the thing that holds it is something most people have never heard of, even though they eat it every day. It is called gluten. When you mix flour and water and you work it with your hands, 2 proteins in the flour link arms and form a web, a stretchy, elastic web. The more you work the dough, the stronger that web becomes, until it is strong enough to catch every bubble of gas the yeast makes and hold it tight. That is the whole secret of bread in 2 living parts. The yeast makes the air. The gluten catches it. Everything else is just helping those 2 things do their work. Now think about that for a second. There is no machine in that. There is no factory in that. A child could understand it, and for most of human history, a child did. Bread is older than almost anything we call civilization. We were baking flat loaves on hot stones 9,000 years before anyone built a city. The Egyptians figured out the rise. They left dough out. Wild yeast from the air drifted in and went to work, and one morning someone baked a puffed, light loaf instead of a flat one, and bread was never the same. The Romans had public bakeries with stone mills turned by donkeys. Every culture that ever planted wheat learned to do this, because it is one of the oldest and most honest things a pair of human hands can do. And the Amish never let it go. Where I live, bread is not a product. It is a rhythm. My grandmother baked on the same day every week, and the whole house smelled of it by noon. She did not measure with cups half the time. She measured with her hands, with the feel of the dough, with the way it sprang back when she pressed it. She used to say a good loaf will tell you when it is ready if you have the patience to listen. She kept her recipe simple on purpose. Flour, water, sugar to feed the yeast and to brown the crust, a little lard or butter to keep it tender, and salt for flavor and to keep the yeast in line. That was it. That is still it. The recipe on that pencil card is the recipe I am going to give you today, and it has not needed improving in 60 years. But here is where it gets uncomfortable, because somewhere along the way, bread stopped being a thing you make and became a thing you buy, and the people who sell it had a problem. Real bread, honest bread, the bread I just described, goes stale. Not in a bad way, not in a dangerous way. It just firms up after a few days, the way everything natural changes with time. But you cannot sell a thing that changes. You cannot ship it across the country and let it sit on a shelf for weeks if it is going to firm up by Thursday. So they went to work on it. And I want to be honest with you the way I always am. What they added is not poison. I'm not going to stand here and tell you store bread will hurt you because that is not true and the breathless videos that say so are lying to you. But it is not just flour, water, sugar, fat, and salt anymore. Read the bag. You will find mono and diglycerides. You will find something called DATEM. You will find calcium propionate. And you will find enzymes, often just listed as the word enzymes, hiding a whole world. Each of these does a real job. The emulsifiers, the mono and diglycerides, they soften the crumb artificially and make it feel fresh long after it should. The calcium propionate stops mold from growing, which is how a loaf survives 3 weeks in a warm truck. And the enzymes, this is the clever part. The enzymes go in and snip apart the very starch that would normally firm up, so the bread cannot go stale the way nature intended. Now think about what that means. The softness you feel in store bread on day 10 is not freshness. It is engineering. It is a loaf that has been chemically convinced not to age. And here is the part that should bother you. None of that was added for you. It was added for the truck, for the warehouse, for the shelf, for the long road between a factory and your kitchen. The convenience is real. I will give them that. But you have been taught to believe that long-lasting softness is a sign of good bread, when in truth it is a sign of a loaf built to survive a journey you never needed it to take. Your grandmother's bread did not travel. It went from her oven to her table, and it was gone in 2 days, and nobody ever wished it lasted longer. So if you have never baked a loaf in your life, and you are thinking this is for people with time and a fancy kitchen, stay with me, because this next part is specifically for you. You do not need a machine. You do not need a stand mixer. You do not need a single thing you cannot already find in your kitchen and at any grocery store in the country. Let me give you the recipe exactly as it is written on that card, and then I will show you the one step that separates a good loaf from a flat, sad one. Here is what you need, and this makes 2 loaves because no one in my grandmother's house ever made just one. 2 cups of warm water, and I mean warm, not hot. Around 110 degrees, which is just warmer than your skin, the temperature of a comfortable bath. 2/3 of a cup of white sugar. A scant tablespoon and a half of active dry yeast, which is 2 of the little packets. A tablespoon and a half of salt. A 1/4 cup of vegetable oil or melted butter or lard if you have it, and about 6 cups of flour. Bread flour if you can get it, because it has more of the protein that builds that gluten web I told you about, but ordinary all-purpose flour will make a fine, soft loaf too. Now here is the order, and the order matters. First, you take your warm water and you stir the sugar into it until it dissolves. Then you sprinkle the yeast over the top and you walk away. 5 minutes, maybe 10. When you come back, the surface should be foamy, almost like the head on a glass of root beer. This is the most important step in the whole recipe, and almost nobody tells you why. That foam is proof that your yeast is alive. If it does not foam, your yeast is dead. Your water was too hot and you killed it, or it was too old. And if you go ahead and mix dead yeast into your flour, you will knead and wait and bake and pull out a flat, heavy brick, and you will blame yourself, when the truth is the bread was dead before it ever began. So watch for the foam. That foam is the whole game. Once it is foaming, you stir in your salt and your oil. Then you add the flour a cup or 2 at a time, stirring as you go until it comes together into a shaggy dough that pulls away from the sides of the bowl. Now you turn it out onto a floured counter and you knead. This is where the gluten is born. You push the dough away with the heel of your hand, you fold it back over itself, you turn it a quarter and you do it again. And again. For about 8 to 10 minutes. It will start sticky and rough, and it will slowly turn smooth and soft and springy, like the lobe of your ear. That change you feel under your hands is the protein web forming, strand by strand. You are not just mixing. You are building the very thing that will hold the air. Then you let it rest. You put the dough in a greased bowl, you cover it with a cloth, and you set it somewhere warm and out of the draft, and you leave it alone for about an hour until it has doubled in size. This is the first rise, and this is the yeast doing its slow, patient work, filling that gluten web with gas. Do not rush it. Do not poke it every 5 minutes. My grandmother used to say the dough rises on God's time, not yours. When it has doubled, you press it down gently to let the big bubbles out. You divide it in two, and you shape each half into a loaf and lay it in a greased bread pan. Then comes the second rise, shorter this time, 30 to 45 minutes, until the dough has crowned up just over the rim of the pan. And then, and only then, into the oven. 350 degrees for about 30 minutes, until the tops are deep golden brown and the loaf sounds hollow when you tap the bottom. If you have a thermometer, the inside should read right around 190 degrees. That is how you know the center is set, and the bread is done all the way through. And now I will give you the one trick I promised, the thing that almost everyone misses. The moment those loaves come out of the oven while they are still hot, you take a stick of butter and you rub it across the top crust. You will hear it sizzle. That thin coat of fat does something beautiful. It keeps the crust from going hard and crackly as it cools, and it gives you that soft, tender, golden top that you remember from a real kitchen and have never once gotten from a bag. It is the smallest step in the whole recipe. It takes 10 seconds, and it is the difference between a loaf that looks homemade and a loaf that tastes like it came from someone who loved you. Then you wait, and I know this is the hardest part. You let it cool, at least a little, because a loaf is still cooking on the inside even after it leaves the oven, and if you cut it too soon, it will gum up and tear. Give it 20 minutes. Let it breathe. Now let me tell you the part I saved for last, because it answers the question every single one of you is going to ask. Why does my bread go stale faster than the store bread? And the answer is the most honest thing I can tell you about baking. Your bread goes stale faster because it is real. When bread cools, the starch inside it begins to slowly change shape and harden, a thing the food scientists call retrogradation, and it is just nature firming up over time. Sugar slows it. The fat you added slows it. But nothing in your honest loaf stops it, because you did not add the enzymes and the emulsifiers that the factory adds to hold a loaf hostage against time. Your bread is staling because it is alive in the way all real food is alive, and all real food changes. And here is a thing almost no one knows. Do not put your bread in the refrigerator. It feels right, but it is exactly wrong. The cold of a refrigerator actually speeds up that starch hardening, and your bread will go stale faster in the fridge than on the counter. If you want to keep a loaf, keep it in a bag at room temperature for a few days, or wrap it tight and put it in the freezer, where the cold is deep enough to stop the staling entirely. Pull it out, let it thaw, warm it in the oven, and it comes back to life like the day you baked it. That is the secret the bag of additives was trying to fake. You can have it for free, with a freezer and a little planning. So let me be honest with you the way I promised. This bread will not last 3 weeks. It is not supposed to. It is best in the first 2 or 3 days, and after that it makes the finest toast and the best bread pudding you have ever had, so nothing is ever wasted. It is a soft, slightly sweet sandwich loaf, not a hard-crusted artisan bread, and if that is what you want, this is not that recipe. And your very first loaf might not be perfect. The yeast might be slow, the rise might be shy, the shape might be homely. That is fine. My grandmother baked 1,000 loaves before mine, and she would tell you the same. You learn this bread with your hands, and your hands learn fast. But here is what I want you to take from this. Nobody hid this recipe from you in a vault. Nobody buried it. The truth is simpler, and in a way sadder than that. It was just quietly allowed to be forgotten, because there is no money in teaching a man to feed himself when you can sell him a bag instead. The knowledge was not stolen from you. It was just set down, one generation at a time, until a whole country forgot that the softest, most honest bread it ever ate came out of its own grandmother's ovens, made of 5 things, for the price of a few coins. You were never given this, now you have it. If you are the kind of person who believes that real knowledge has been quietly pushed aside so someone else could sell you the convenient version, then you already know what to do. Bake one loaf this weekend. Just one. And then come back here and tell me in the comments how it turned out, and tell me one thing more. Tell me what your mother or your grandmother used to bake, the smell that meant home to you, because I read every single comment, and those are the ones I treasure most. Subscribe and stay close, because next time I am going to show you the sourdough starter the Amish have kept alive for over 100 years, passed from kitchen to kitchen, a living thing older than anyone now alive who feeds it, and the reason a jar of flour and water can outlast the people who made it. You will not want to miss that one. Bake it, share it, and remember, the people who built this country with their hands knew things we are only just starting to remember.